So we are going to make ourselves a little rocket here, or a missile. And we are assuming that you know very little about modo, maybe even nothing. So we're going to do everything step by step, and this is how we eat the elephant, one bite at a time. Let's start with just moving around in the 3D view. Some keyboard shortcuts that will be useful for you. A on the keyboard will auto fit. So if you have something in the view and you're zoomed in, you can hit A, and that will auto fit. A for auto fit. The Alt key on the keyboard, you see how I hold that down, how my cursor changes to a rotate. Then if I click and drag in the viewport, I can rotate the view around. That's how we get around. Holding down Shift with the Alt key at the same time lets us pan the view. And Control and Alt lets us do the zoom thing. You can also do similar functions right up here in the top right-hand corner of the viewport. You can zoom, you can rotate, and you can pan. But I highly recommend you learn Alt, Shift Alt, and Control Alt. Okay. Now, since this is a beginner tutorial, we're not even going to build our own models yet. We are going to work with existing content. But don't fear, because we'll be able to do some cool stuff. So see this tab over here called Layout? And we click on that. That will give us this little layout view where we see a 3D view like we had before. But now we have the preset browser down here at the bottom. And don't worry if you don't see animals. You probably do, but if you don't, not a problem. If you click on the little pop-up here, and you need to have the content installed. And if you have the content installed, you should see this whole directory full of items. You probably will not see these because these I've downloaded from the asset site, but we'll cover that later. Okay, so you see these little folders. Each one of these folders has a group of other elements in it. So what we want to do is go down to Vehicles, right here, double click on it. That opens up, and then we'll go over to Spacecraft, double click, it will scan the directory, and voila, we have some nice little pieces of spacecraft there. Now, one way to make a missile is just to go like this. Double click, missile. That was easy. All right. So again, we're using our navigation controls. Alt, Shift Alt, and Control Alt. Now, if we wanted to build up a project from other pieces, we can do that too. So let's say we wanted to add this space laser to the side of our missile. Well, you can double click on the space laser. And now if we go over to the item list, you can see we have two items. There's our missile, and there's our space laser. And again, we can zoom in here. Now we get into doing what we call transforming the shape, the model. And that can be a move, it can be a rotate, it can be a scale, which is changing the size. Now in this case, you'll see that there are some different, we call selection modes up here. You want to be in one of these first three, and we'll cover those another time, but this is the way that we edit the basic parts of the model. These are vertices, which are the little points. You see here, edges, which are, of course, these edges, and then the polygons are the faces that you see here. Okay, so this space laser, again, A to auto fit, zoom in, is very large compared to our missile. So what we're going to do is scale it. And you see we have some little icons over here. This last one on the right is the scale icon, and you see that we have some handles. Now this one is going to scale on that axis. If you do something, you're playing with it and you want to undo it, you just hit Control Z for undo. This scales on that axis. Again, undo. And that axis. The circles will scale on two axes at the same time. I'm just undoing each step on the fly here. And then finally the center circle will scale all three axes, so it scales the thing uniformly. Okay. Now since I've scaled that, you see the scaling happened around the center of that little model there. So it pulled that away from the missile. That's no problem, because now we can go to use our move tool, which we see here. And if we go to the move tool, we can drag this around like this. And we can just move it up. And it works similarly to the the scale tool in that we can drag on one axis by clicking on an axis arrow, axis handle. We can edit on two axes by clicking on one of the circles. Okay, you can't really move on all three axes simultaneously. Well, you kind of can. If I click and drag anywhere in the view, it's going to move it along the screen's axis, which is in fact moving on, usually moving on more than two axes. All right, but I like to use the handles. If your handle goes off in space like this because you've clicked, you can just deactivate by clicking on the icon and then click again, and it'll reset itself to the center there. All right, so let's just look at it from the side, and we can see that I've got that sort of just resting on the surface of the missile. And we'll push it over just a little bit. And then the other thing we can do is we can rotate it. So if we look at our missile here, let's say we want the space laser to face the other direction. We want to rotate it around. So we'll use the rotate tool here. And now we can just rotate it around. And if you look over at the left of my interface, you'll see there's a numeric input. And a full revolution is 360 degrees. Half is, of course, 180. So we type that in, 180, and that gives us a perfect flip, basically. Now that I've done that, once again, I've moved the base. So we'll just use the move tool here to get the base aligned nicely to the shape. Now, you'll notice that the background item there is in wireframe, so we can't really see if it's intersecting properly. So we can hold down the Shift key and select the Space Missile. Now we have them both selected at the same time. And you can see that maps in there pretty nicely. So now our missile has a space laser. Neat. Another thing we can do, of course, if we go to our space laser, is we could mirror that. So let's just do that. Let's say we want to go to the modeling tools here, and then under duplicate, a lot of tools. We'll go to mirror, and we're just going to click there in the viewport, and that mirrored it. And again, we may just want to move that whole group over a little just to center it. And push it down a little bit. Oops. Make sure I hit my... And then select both layers. And there you go. Now you can see that I'm intersecting here. So no problem. If I just want to move that forward a little bit. I'm hitting the Control key, by the way. Holding down Control and click on that will toggle its selection. Okay. So then we can just push this forward. And select them both. And there you go.